Academica Media. From Academica Media Studios in Miami, Florida, it's Big Ideas in Education, a weekly recap of inspiration and innovation in your schools.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Big Ideas in Education. Welcome to the first Big Ideas in Education episode of 2022. It's always a little jarring at the beginning of the year to remember what the right year is.
It begins by a 3-month process of writing 2021 on stuff and then having to
scratching it out. Exactly. I am your host, Dr. Sarah Boulos of Somerset Academy Schools, joined, of course, by my co-host, Ryan Kairalla of Doral College. Hi again, Ryan.
Hi, Sarah. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. I had that similar situation where I was looking for some allergy medicine in my cabinet, and it said it expired 12/2020, and I thought, oh, it's only a month. And then I realized, nope, that's 1 year and 1 month.
Oh, man.
So I'm sure everybody else's year is off to a fantastic start as well, just as mine was. What would you like to share for your first story of the new year?
Yeah, cool story this week, Sarah. The past couple years have shown us that student learning can take place anywhere, on school campuses and increasingly so in our living rooms online. But how about in the Metaverse? Enter Optima Classical Academy, a Florida virtual charter school that will be opening its digital doors this August. Billed by its founders as the world's first virtual reality charter school, Optima plans to start with an enrollment of 1,300 students in grades 3 through 8. In an interview with Reimagine Ed, Optima Foundation CEO Erica Douglas said that students in the program will receive daily live instruction each morning in a VR Metaverse classroom that will resemble a typical brick-and-mortar classroom environment, except it's in VR. And in the afternoons, students will complete asynchronous work using online platforms and books. Optima plans to use its VR platform to send students on virtual field trips to locations such as Pompeii, Independence Hall, and even outer space, and will offer extracurricular activities both in and out of the metaverse. As a public charter school, the program will be open enrollment for all students in Florida and will be tuition free. And because I know many people are going to ask this, the VR headsets will also be free. They'll be purchased by the school using the per pupil state education funding. I'll say this, Sarah, as a bit of a VR nut myself, I'm actually looking at my Oculus just over there in my office, and a regular, I would say above average VR golf player myself, I'm always intrigued about VR being used in a wide variety of spaces. And to me, education seems like a natural place for VR to go at some point, and our friends at Optima Classical Academy are bringing us there this fall, apparently.
Okay, so let's assume maybe for somebody listening, not for me, definitely, but let's assume for somebody listening that there may have been a few words in that story that they didn't quite catch. So let's define a few things. So things maybe like Metaverse, VR I know is virtual reality, right? VR, virtual reality, like the AR is augmented reality. That right. I know I know things. This is for other people. And when we say things like metaverse and singularity and things that are a little scary and out there, what exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about kids who they go to school with a headset on in their bedroom or at home? And do they have to wear like haptic suits? I mean, is this like, are we in Ready Player One? What's going on? This seems weirdly futuristic, but I guess I could see it. It gives me so many questions.
So I think what we're going to have to do is, and we're definitely going to put some links online so people can see what this school looks like, but what is perhaps a little more, might assuage some of our concerns is that the metaverse classroom looks a lot more like the classrooms we have in a brick and mortar school than, say, a virtual classroom where everybody's a bunch of Zoom boxes. Imagine putting a headset over your eyes and your ears and your eyes, and you are transported to a room where the teacher's in the front. You look to your left, you see some of your classmates. You look to the right, you see more of your classmates. And except, instead of maybe a traditional classroom with, walls and desks, you might be standing next to the base of a volcano or standing in outer space in spacesuits or something like that, because the metaverse
Or in a
wouldn't take you
Hogwarts
anywhere.
classroom.
And in my own personal dream, in a Hogwarts classroom. Exactly. And so that's always been one of the biggest knocks that people have had about virtual education, at least the way many have been exposed to it as a result of the pandemic, is it's just staring at a box all day. I feel like I'm losing some of that classroom experience. Well, VR does a pretty interesting job of replicating it. And I looked at some videos of what Optima Classical is doing. They brought in guest speakers. Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart down here in South Florida actually stopped in and made an appearance. Obviously, the school opens in the fall, but I think other schools are doing similar virtual activities with the nonprofit that's starting this charter school. And he was standing there, a virtual version of him, talking to these virtual students that were all sitting in virtual desks. And it's really, really interesting. And I think there's some technological challenges that I think are going to need to be overcome over time. I think what we're seeing is just the beginning of VR learning, and there's a lot that needs to be done to really make it something that has a lot of long-term potential. But again, I love VR, so I find this very exciting.
So for someone with, I don't know if I would say a limited experience with VR, but I don't think I have very much experience with VR. I think my only, other than, like being on a roller coaster or something like a virtual reality roller coaster at Universal Studios, I think my only experience is like with the Google Cardboard, I think it was called. Was that virtual reality?
Yeah.
Right. So they had those
you put your smartphone in front of the thing and
so they would have like a almost like it looked like ski goggles with a little thing to put your phone in, and you could see, and you were in, and as a person with motion sickness, it was an interesting experience, and I didn't do it for very long, I'll be honest. But I can only imagine for kids. So, I have so many things in my head thinking, if it's 3rd through 8th graders doing something like this, are they not moving all day, or is their movement in the, at home, is that going to be mirrored in virtual reality? I think just from a very, what does this look like kind of standpoint, I would have so many questions. And then in the classroom as a teacher, I have so many questions. So I would love to go to these links and see what it looks like, because I can only imagine listeners have a lot of questions and how this is going to work. It's exciting, but it's also something that I guess I understood that this is basically possible now, but how realistic is it going to be that this is something that we would be moving towards, or is it going to be just kind of a niche thing? Because I know virtual reality is a possibility, but it's not like we're all using it every day.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the current state of VR and what the potential it has for education is probably where typical online education was 10 or 15 years ago in terms of its potential, right? Where we just sort of got to the beginning of video conferencing. A lot of people didn't have high-speed internet. And so some people could do it, but it hasn't reached the potential it has, say, today. And I think VR is the same way. I think what VR is going to look like 10 or 15 years from now, radically different from the VR that we're all accustomed to right now. And some of that technology needs to happen. Some of those advancements need to happen. For example, in VR, if I'm just imagining myself to be a student in virtual reality, I'm putting on my headset, the teacher's lecturing, and the teacher makes some really good point that I want to write in my notebook. You can't do that in VR. Unless you can't look at your sheet of paper in VR, because that's something that's in the real world. You'd have to take your headset off. Now, when we start to combine VR and AR, where maybe you can look up and see the teacher and look down and see your actual real world notebook, that might be, but that's, again, something that is going to need to become more ubiquitous for the VR setting to replicate a lot of what we're already doing in traditional education. But I don't think we're that far away from that.
Yeah, this is an interesting and exciting idea of what's on the horizon, but I think there's definitely still a lot that us, old school normies might have questions about with regard to how to make it work. And it's something I definitely want to take a lot of time to look into and just see what this school will look like. Maybe they'll let us
Sarah,
have virtual visits. And
I was just thinking, Optima Classical over in Pasco County, not that far from where we are. We work with Florida charter schools as well. I'm thinking we make a Metaverse field trip. Maybe we have them on the show, but in VR, like we'll get some headsets, we'll pop them on, we'll do a Big Ideas in Education interview from the Metaverse. How wild would that be?
I think it'd be really interesting, and I will take some Dramamine before we do it.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. I had a certain experience with a game of VR. I guess it was VR football, I believe, that required me to take a rest afterwards because it did a number on my motion sickness. But we'll all get stronger and sturdier. I find that for me in the metaverse with motion sickness, as long as it's actually me moving around the room, like with my own feet, versus like moving myself around in it with a joystick, the latter is what messes me up. But if it's just me kind of walking around, I can handle that much more easily. But it's I'm way too into VR.
I'm willing to try.
Hey, that's all we need. And we'll go from there. We'll get you there, Sarah. You're gonna be playing VR golf with me in no time. It is quite a blast.
Sounds good.
Sarah, I know you had some thoughts coming into the new year with education.
Absolutely. It's definitely that time of year when we start thinking about what is coming, make resolutions, and consider what we want to do to better ourselves. As a classroom teacher, I've often started my first week back in the new year with journal prompts about New Year's resolutions. And while I think it's a fun exercise, I think that it's important to reflect back as much as it is to look forward. And I think we've spent a lot of time looking forward, thinking about what the future is going to be after we get through the pandemic. And I can't believe, as I'm looking back at the topics we discussed in 2021, that we're looking at being 2 years in this pandemic, a 2-year period that has completely changed the landscape of what we do. So I wanted to look back at what we've talked about in the past 2 years. And one thing that jumped out to me is kind of a theme of connection. How can we connect with families? How can we connect with students who need additional support? How can we get students and teachers connected over the internet to have distance learning, virtual instruction, or even, like what you're mentioning here with virtual reality instruction? Connection at a very basic level is what we as educators strive to do, to achieve. We strive to connect ideas together, to provide a link from what a child knows to what we want them to know. We connect emotionally. We develop relationships with our students because learning is social. We're social creatures, and we learn from these connections. And as we're facing even more distance and ailments and the potential for a 2022 that might be just as physically distant and complicated as the past 2 years have proven to be, I genuinely wanted to thank each of you for listening, for your choice to connect with us. And I wanted to encourage all of us, myself included, to find new ways to connect, to really deeply connect with those around you. I didn't really bring a story or an article to share. I wanted to take a moment to reflect, and I want to encourage everyone listening, all of us, to do that, to really think about encouraging ourselves to connect with someone, or even if it's finding time to connect with yourself. And as educators, we've always been in the care industry, and that really takes a toll. And the past 2 years has been taxing in ways we could have never anticipated. So that's, I don't know if I would call it a resolution, but just kind of a call to take some time to connect, to reflect, to recharge, and to think about how we can be well and take care of ourselves.
That's very well said, Sarah. And I found that over the past 2 years, I've still found ways, to connect with people, whether it's podcasting so that I can still hang out with you, or, going to more virtual professional development sessions or more virtual happy hours. We're education is an industry where we do what we do best when we're doing it together. It's something where synergy happens every day, and we create the best outcomes by working together on stuff. And those opportunities can still happen, but when we're all sort of in our homes or engrossed in the pandemic, the potential for siloing is so much higher. And so we can still connect, but I think we have to be more purposeful about it. Whereas in the old times, it was a lot more automatic. It was sort of inherent in everything that we did, that we were going to collaborate, that we were going to connect with others, with ourselves. And now we can still do it, but we sort of have to make it more of an appointment than we used to.
That's a great point. And being more thoughtful about it. And something that I think I've noticed about trying to make connections is the feedback that I've gotten from others about, oh, it looks like this is happening, or it looks like that is happening, about myself. Like, hey, you are doing this, that, or the other. And I noticed that when we're talking about, especially when we're doing anything distance related, right? If it's even podcasting or distance learning or anything like that, having meetings virtually, we really are just showing this one box, right? This one snippet of ourselves, and we're projecting this tiny piece of ourselves. And I think as educators, it's always like that, right? We only project this one version of ourselves in front of our students. I sometimes tell teachers when we're in mentorship or in training new teachers, sometimes it's like you have your teacher personality and you have your own personality, right? Because who you are as an adult is maybe not the same person that you are when you're in front of 8-year-olds and you're teaching them, right? You have to project a little bit. You might have to talk slower. You might have to be a bit more positive or patient than you are in your everyday life. But it's interesting that I think we may be projecting just this tiny portion of ourselves, and you watch that and you see that. And I'm not trying to get too philosophical or anything, but it's interesting that we see basically, you turn the lights on and the filters on and you blur the background, and you really are only seeing this one part of someone, right? If you're listening, you only are hearing 15, 20 minutes of Ryan and myself. And we're all very complicated and layered people. And I think when it comes to either working with other adults or working with our students, it's really easy to forget the deeper things that create those connections with others, and that whatever we're seeing, whether we're seeing into a child's living room or bedroom or whatever it is, or if we're looking into a colleague's office or whatever it is, we're not always experiencing that full connection that we would have been experiencing if we were in real life. And take a moment, and I've been humbled by conversations recently with colleagues about how the fact that, we have an appointment to get on our Zoom call, and we get on it and we talk and we hit the topic, and maybe that's making us more efficient. But are we relating to each other the way that we need to as humans to connect? And as educators, I think that there is a part of us that goes into this field because we care, and we care about others, and our relationships and connections with each other are a big part of what we do. So I just wanted to make sure that we take some time to really think about how we connect with each other and how we're connecting with ourselves, because it's, a kind of a cliche thing we say a lot as teachers, but you can't give to others, right? Your bucket cannot be there for others if your bucket is not full for yourself. That same idea of you have to put your own mask on first on the airplane before, before you can help the other person. And I think something that's constantly on my mind and that we've been hearing in the news is about all of these teacher shortages. And now there's this thing called the Great Resignation, right? Where people are leaving their jobs and leaving their fields, hopefully for a better opportunity. But how are we as educators making sure that the education field is still something that people want to be a part of? And I think that the longer we go without connection, the less we are going to keep quality people in this field.
That's very well said, Sarah. I don't even feel compelled to want to cloud that tremendous insight with any additional commentary on my part, because that was remarkable.
Well, it's just something that's been on my mind. And, since I've trapped people into listening to me here, I guess this is the platform I'm going to share it. But you know, I'll be honest, sometimes I'm really excited to have something great to share. And sometimes it's like, you know, I don't know. I couldn't quite find the article I wanted to talk about. And I realized it was because there was something I wanted to talk about. And I know we've talked about on this show before how important educator voices are. So, you know, along with that connection, use your voice and talk about something and make sure you're listening to your own voice and really being true to who you are. And I think I'll get off my soapbox now and thank you all for being a part of this. We'd love to connect with you. If you would like to reach out to us on social media using the hashtag Big Ideas in Education, you can always do that. And we'd love to hear more about ways that you're connecting. I know we're going to learn more about virtual reality in the weeks to come. I know Ryan's not going to put that down. And hopefully we get an opportunity to recharge a little bit and make 2022 a fantastic year. Thanks for listening.
The views expressed on the preceding program have been those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Academica, its clients, staff, affiliates, or advertisers.